Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 1 of my JavaScript tutorial. This tutorial is going to be very quick, and I'm going to go over most everything you need to know to program in JavaScript in this one tutorial. If you want to see a slower version that goes through this information much slower, I provide a link to another JavaScript tutorial to that. What we have here on the screen is basic HTML, and I'm just going to jump right into it. Normally you have your JavaScript code in the head section, or you link to it. I'm going to show you how to do that later on. But for now, I'm just basically going to go into the body section, and I'm going to go over all the different things that go into writing JavaScript code. First thing you want to do is start with the script tag, and then you want to define the language is equal to JavaScript, right like that. Then you want to follow that up with type equals text / JavaScript. And whenever I create tags, I like to automatically close them. And also what you're going to do for browsers that do not have JavaScript, which really there aren't many of them anymore, but this is just a precaution. You want to put in the no script tag, which we have right inside of here, and then you want to provide a message that's going to go to the people that do not have JavaScript enabled. This site requires script, for example, inside of two h3 tags. Close off that guy. Also, to protect in situations where people do not have JavaScript running, you want to create an HTML comment section. And how you do that is with this bracket right inside of here. You want to put all of your JavaScript code in here, and I'm going to say hide JavaScript. You don't need to do this, but it just provides information on exactly why you are commenting out all of this code. And then this last line right here closes off the HTML comment. That's how you make comments in HTML also, by the way. First thing what I'm going to go over is variables, and it's very important to understand that JavaScript is case sensitive. That means that all your variables and functions, all of their names must use the same exact capitalization throughout all of your programming code. And your variables, when you define them, must start with an underscore, a $, or a letter, either lowercase or uppercase. All of them must start with that. Then after, you can use any of those symbols, but you can also use numbers. So that's how you give names inside of JavaScript. There's 4 basic data types. There are numbers, strings, booleans, and objects. There's also arrays, but arrays in JavaScript are actually looked upon as objects. If you want to write something to the screen inside of JavaScript, start off with document, write, and then for example, I'm going to show you right now the maximum number you can use inside of JavaScript, and just type this guy in here right like that, and I'm going to put a plus sign and I'm going to put a break symbol, because while you can put new lines in JavaScript, they don't really do anything inside of HTML. So there is the maximum number inside of JavaScript, but you also must understand that JavaScript precision only works up to 16 digits in length. If you go any farther than 16 digits, you can expect it no longer to hold its precision. So what we're going to do is print the screen here, the maximum value, as well as the minimum value to the screen. You can see right here the maximum number inside of JavaScript, quite a large number, and the minimum number inside of JavaScript. If you want any of this code, I provide a link to all the code in the underbar, as well as a link to an article that goes into this information in depth. Then, like I said before, there's also strings inside of JavaScript, and here I'm going to create a variable with the var tag here that says that you want to define a variable. Then I'm creating a variable name, calling it samp_str is equal to, here are some escaped characters. And why I'm going into escaped characters is I'm going to show you the most commonly escaped characters. Of course, if you want to use a double quote, you're going to have to backslash followed by double quote. And if you want to show a single quote, you need to put a backslash before that. And obviously, if you want to put a backslash in there, you're going to put 2 of them in there. And also if you want to use tabs, \t and \n, even though they're not really technically going to work inside of JavaScript. But either way, those are the most common escaped characters. And just so you understand again, just backslash must precede if you want these guys to show up on the screen. Document, write, prints them to screen. And here I'm just going to type in samp_str. And you could say here are some escaped characters, and you can see the backslash does not show up here, does not show up here, or does not show up there. So that's how you would use those characters inside of JavaScript. And now I'll briefly go over a couple different JavaScript functions. As this tutorial proceeds, I'm going to get more in depth into each of these things. I just always see long drug out tutorials in which people don't ever do what I'm doing right now, which is pack a ton of information into one tutorial. And I'm just creating some strings here with some values, right like this. If you want to combine 2 strings, you just put a plus sign between them. Here I'm doing this to insert a break statement inside of there. I'm going to create another one called combined, and I'm going to say that I want that to be equal to first string plus, just add these strings together, and now I combine both of those values inside of one string. And if I want to print that out the screen, instead I'm going to put combined in here. Like, first string, second string. That came from this. And the value of combined is this string plus that string, and then followed by a break statement. And we can do other things inside of here. Like if I wanted to print out the length of the string, just type in length of string, right like that. And if I want the length of combined, the name of the string, follow that with length. And then I'm also going to show you, don't forget to put the plus sign inside of here. And if you wanted to print out, say, a substring, meaning part of a string, I'm going to take combined. And let's say that I want to be able to grab string out of this guy. So let's say I want to print out string to the screen. Well, everything starts off with an index of 0. So the index of f in this string right here would be 0. So if I just wanted to print out f, I would say I want the index of 0, and it would print out f, then followed by 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, if I want to print string out the screen, this is index 6, and I actually have to go one past that. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that will actually print out string to the screen. So start at the index of 6, followed by 12, and then jump over here and put in substring. And it'll print out exactly what I want. And I'm going to show you two other common string functions that are used. Like let's say, for example, I wanted to print out the last character of a string. Real simple. Just come in here, go combined, and then what I'm going to do is go character at, and I'm going to take combined length -1, and that's going to give me the last character in the string. It's going to print out to screen. Here I'm also going to show you how to print out to screen the index value for the first location of, in this situation, t. That plus, and just go to combined and follow that up with index of t, followed by the break symbol. You can see it printed all those out. Length of the string is 26 characters, and then here it printed out strings starting from the 6th index the whole way till the 11th or the 12th, which is actually a blank space. It prints out that the last character in the string is g, and the index of t is 4. And here's the string, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what that guy's talking about. So those are a bunch of different ways of working with and manipulating strings inside of JavaScript. And now I'm going to show you how to work with different types of variables. If you try to, let's say, create a variable, and even though it's a number, you're surrounding it with quotes, which automatically makes it a string. And then you create another variable that's actually going to contain a value that is a number, and you try to add these two together. JavaScript is always going to assume that if you are adding something together and one of those values is a string, that you want it all to be treated as a string. And I'll show you an example, it'll make more sense. So here I'm creating a new variable called total, and I'm saying I want to combine the values of num variable and string variable. However, because there is no way to multiply strings, if you try to do that, JavaScript is going to assume that you want the string to be treated as if it was a number. So here I'm going to multiply a string times a regular number, and it's automatically going to convert, in this situation, this string value into a number, unlike up here where it automatically treated this number value as if it was a string. This will make more sense. So if I come in here and go 5 plus 10 equals, and then follow that with the value that total has. And here, if I go 5 times 10 equals plus the total after the multiplication. And you can see right here, whenever one of these values is a string, it assumes that you want the number to be a string. And that's the reason why you get printed out to screen 10 followed by the number 5. However, because there is no way to multiply strings, it automatically assumes that you want the string, which is the 5 right here, to be treated as a number. And that's the reason why you get the return value of 50. Now you could also force data type conversion if you would like to. So for example, let's say I want to have total be equal to num underscore variable plus, and I want to force that string to be looked upon as if it was a number. I would start off with number. This is a function, and it's going to convert this string into a number. And here I'm actually going to just copy this guy right here, put it inside of there, and go 5 plus 10 is equal to, and with the new value that is stored inside of total, you're going to see that this time it treats it as if it is a number because I converted it. This time 5 plus 10 comes out to 15. So you use the number function to force a string into being looked at as if it was a number. There's also a string function just like there is a number function. So I'm going to create another variable called num underscore variable 2, and this time I'm going to call the string function, and I'm going to force the number variable to be treated as a string. And this time, if if I go num underscore variable plus num underscore variable, and then copy these guys right here, paste, and then put 2 inside of here, and then put 2 inside of here, you're going to see how those results change. Here, it actually looks at both of these guys as if they are both numbers and comes out to a total of 20. And here, because you forced the value of num_var2 to be equal to the string representation of num_var, this is treated as if they are both strings, and that's the reason why you have 1010 printed out to the screen. Now let's say you want to work with floats or just numbers that have decimal places. Here I'm going to create a variable called float_var, and I'm going to give it a value of pi, just a random number of digits there. And I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call this one float underscore string. I'm going to use the toFixed function here to round this value of pi to 5 digits. That's what that toFixed does right there. And if I want to print this out the screen, underscore string, reload it, and you'll see that it does cut them off to 5 digits. So that's what toFixed does. Another neat function. However, you could also use a function called parseInt, and here it's going to print out the integer or the decimal-less word to screen. I'm just going to type in parse int, and it's a round float var in this situation. And I'll actually show you a couple more. The type of function actually will return the data type of whatever value you pass it. And just for good measure, I'm going to print out the data type for both float string and float var. And you can see that it properly represents that this is a string and this is a number. And here you can see that with the parseInt function, that it automatically cut off all the decimal places and just printed out the integer representation for the value of pi. And then you have Boolean variables. They can only have one or another of value. False, and false also is looked upon as any value that is equal to 0 or NaN. And NaN represents not a number. And Booleans can also have a value of true, which is literally everything that is not either a value of 0 or a value of NaN. Don't worry about the NaN part, I'll get more into that later. So it's either true or false, that's all it is. So bring that point across, let's create a Boolean. And here I'm going to force the value, just like I did with the string and the number function, to convert the number 23 into a Boolean variable type. Boolean of 23 is, put that in there, plus underscore var. And you can see here the Boolean of 23 is true. Remember, everything that's not a 0 or not a number is going to ultimately be equal to true whenever you are forcing things to become Boolean values. And that's what we did with this Boolean function equivalent right here. And I can also show you a couple different ways that you can compare values inside of JavaScript. And here I'll create a random number 1 is equal to 5 and var rand number 2 is equal to 10. I can compare these different values in multiple different ways. What I'm going to do is come in here and say, is 5 greater than 10? Obviously, I know that that is not true. And then I'm going to come in here and go parentheses, random underscore number 1. And then I'll put the greater than sign inside of here, random number 2. And then to show you all the different ways to compare all of these different values. Okay, so we can compare based off of greater than. We can also compare based off of greater than or equal to. We can also compare based off of less than or equal to, which is 2 equal signs, or not equal to, which is an exclamation point followed by an equal sign. And we can come in here and do this inside of the actual place where we're doing this testing, right like that. And you can see that it properly picks out, is 5 greater than 10? No, false. Greater than or equal? False. Less than or equal? True. Less than or equal? You can see all of those things all worked out. And that is how you use different comparison operators. You're going to see more of this here actually later on in this tutorial. And the other way that you would compare different values inside of JavaScript is through what are called logical operators. And it's better to just show you. Here are the logical operators. There's and, there's or, and there's not. That's it. So I'm going to show you exactly how those work through an example here again. So I'm just going to print out docWrite, and this guy's going to print to screen. And I'm going to ask it a simple question. I'm going to say, is 5 less than 10 and 5 not equal to 10? Okay, this is just a string. Over here is where I'm actually going to do all the test. So I'm actually going to need 2 parentheses here. And I'm checking to see if 5 is less than the value of 10, which is stored in this random number 2. And to compare that both of these results are true, I'm going to put two and symbols inside of there. I'm going to actually copy this, paste this on the screen. I'm going to say, is random number 1 not equal to the value that's stored in random number 2? And then to demonstrate all the other logical operators that are available, which there's only 3 altogether, print this out a couple different times. And in the second check, I'm going to say, is 5 greater than 10? Or is 5 not equal to 10? And then I just have to come over here, type in that, and then put the OR symbol. The difference between these two is the only way this is going to return a value of true is if this is true and this is true. The way this will return a value of true is if this or this has a value of true. In both circumstances, they're going to come back both true, because in this situation 5 is less than 10 and 5 is not equal to 10. And in this situation only one of these needs to be true and this one is true, so we know we're going to get a value of true here. And here I'm going to use the not statement to just give me the opposite of what it's supposed to give me. Again, we'll get more into the not statement and how it's actually useful later on. But here I'm saying, is 5 less than 10? And you would think, yes, this would give a value of true. Well, it does, but the not symbol immediately flips it. Here, we're checking if 5 is less than 10. Yes, that's true. And we're also checking that 5 is not equal to 10. And that is also true. That's why we get a value of true here. And here, one of these guys is true, meaning that 5 is not equal to 10, and that's why we get a true value. And here we get a false value for if 5 is less than 10, which is obviously true, but because we put a not symbol in there, that kicks back the opposite result, which is false. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that's a lot of information, but we're just moving right along because I'm trying to give you an overview of the whole entire single language all in one little tutorial, which is completely crazy. Now I'm going to go into arrays. Here, we're going to create a variable that is going to be of type array. It's going to be called vehicles. How you create an array is start off with the name new, followed by ARA, array like that. And then here, I'm going to put a bunch of different types of vehicles inside of this array. And just like before where we were talking about how strings have different indexes, well, with arrays, you can actually store whole entire words or whole entire numbers or anything you want, and they all index the same way that strings do, except in this situation, car is going to be in this array's index value of 0. Then truck's going to be in the index for this array of 1 and 2. All right, and you can see that right here, right like that, plus, then I'm going to go vehicles, boom, boom, boom. I want the second value, and that is the reason why I'm putting 1 in there, because the first value actually has an index value of 0. And you can see it kicks back. The second item in the array is truck. And you can see up here that indeed truck is the second value in there. Now there is another way where you can cycle through, or in programming language it's what they call iterating through. You can actually print out all the values in the array by starting off with the command for, and then give it a junk variable that's going to temporarily hold values. In this situation I'm going to call it I, then follow it within vehicles, the name of the array. You're also going to see more of this guy later date. And what this guy is going to do is it's going to cycle through and print out all of the different values in the arrays. So in array, and then I'm going to follow that with a plus sign, vehicles. And again, here I'm going to put the value of I. This is going to start off with the value of 0, and then go to 1, and then go to 2 for each of the different values in the array. And it's going to do that automatically because that's what this for in statement does for you. And you can see right here, it's exactly what it did. Printed out the first indexed value, the second indexed value, and the third indexed value right to screen. So now you know the basics of creating arrays, finding values in arrays, and cycling through arrays. So now we'll get on to the conditional operator. And what these are all conditional statements all together. I'm going to show you all the different conditional statements. And what they do is they perform certain actions if certain conditions are met. That's why they're called conditional operators. So I'm going to create a variable that I called random var. And what I'm going to say here is if 5 is less than 10, and then I follow that with a question mark, I want the value of random variable to be equal to the string that says that 5 is less than 10, right like that. And if that is not true, which it is indeed true, what I'm going to do is type 5 is greater than 10, which we know isn't true. Okay, so just go through this again. This is the conditional operator. Basically what it does is it said, If this condition has a value of true, then we want to assign the value of this variable to whatever is here. If this condition is not true, we want to assign the value to this variable to the second guy that lies after this colon right here. And here we'll just say rand var equals, right like that, plus, and just type in rand var. And you can see rand var equals 5 is less than 10. And 5 is less than 10 is the value right here. And the reason why it was assigned that value is because, indeed, 5 is less than 10. And another conditional that everybody who knows anything about programming is well aware of is the if statement. And in JavaScript, if works just like it does in most other languages. Here I'll say if 5 is greater than 10, I want certain conditions to be performed. And what it'll do is perform everything that lies between this opening curly brace and this closing curly brace. Well, I'm only going to ask it to do one thing, and I'm going to print out inside of here with document write, 5 is greater than 10, which obviously it is not. So if I want to run another condition inside of JavaScript, I need to use what is called an else if statement. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if 5 is less than 10, and I'm going to perform all kinds of other additional commands inside of these curly brackets. I'm going to copy that, copy, paste, and here I'm going to say less than 10. Okay, so that'll print that out, and anything else that lies inside of these curly brackets. But what would happen if I changed the value of 10 here to 5 and did likewise there? Well, in this situation, 5 isn't greater than 5 and 5 isn't less than 5. So what we're going to need is an else statement. Obviously 5 is equal to 5. And in that situation, what we're going to do is to print that to screen. And then of course come down here, put that curly bracket in there, and you can see that indeed that did print that out. The only other conditional statement that is available to you inside of JavaScript is the switch statement. Basically what that does, like let's say I create a variable called state and give it the value of Pennsylvania. That's a string, of course. Well, what I do with the switch statement is it's going to test the value that is stored inside of state, right like that. And what it's going to do is it's going to provide different options. So if the value of state in this situation is California, we're going to perform certain actions. You can just define case followed by the value that you think this state might have. And then what we're going to do is print out warmer than me onto screen. And if you want to jump out of this whole entire switch statement, which of course is also going to end with a curly bracket, see open curly bracket, closing curly bracket. Once you get a hit here where they entered this state of California, well, you're not going to want them to continue on looking because we already know what the value of this string is. So if we want to jump out of this statement altogether, we put the break command, and we're going to see the break command here in a second again. And that's going to continue or cease to continue looking to see what the value of this guy is. Let's say they also Pennsylvania. Here, I'm going to say same as me. And then what am I going to do? After I get a hit on the value, I'm going to jump out of this guy. Well, what if they enter something else? And I don't know what it is. How are we going to protect against that? Easy. Default. If they do not enter California or Pennsylvania, in this special situation, we want to give them some sort of answer. So here we're going to say, I don't. And then remember, if I want to use a quote, actually technically I don't have to do this because there's double quotes around it, but I'm going to do it anyway just because I just feel like it. And I'm just going to put I don't know, and then you're going to want to enter a break after that. Same as me, because I assigned Pennsylvania to this guy. It hit on Pennsylvania as the value of this string that is stored in state, and that's the reason why I printed out same as me to the screen. So those are all of the different ways you can perform different actions based off of whether different conditions have been met inside of JavaScript. Remember, I'm covering it all. I know this is fast. If you don't understand anything, just leave a question below and I will cover it. Now I'm going to go through all the different ways you can loop inside of JavaScript. I'm kind of doing this just for fun, just to see what happens. Kind of thinking people might just start screaming at me, but hey, whatever. One way you can loop inside of JavaScript, there's actually, well, I showed you for in to loop through different arrays and also different objects, which we're going to get into objects in another tutorial. If I tried to cover that, that would really make your head explode if you obviously didn't know what JavaScript was. First, in looping, let's say I want to loop between all values between 1 and 10. I'd use the while loop. And as I was looping through all these different guys, I actually want to print to screen their values. And I'll just come in here and go count, which is the value that I have right here. When it first hits this loop, count is going to have the value of 1. And then if I decide to jump through here, and I also want to put a closing curly bracket, but forgot something, because if I hit this and go through here, what's going to happen? Count's going to have a value of 1, and it's going to continue indefinitely until the computer crashes to print 1 to screen. So what do I need to do? I need to increase the value of count. How do I do that? This is a shortcut way to increase the value of count by 1 each time this is hit. So all this means is increase the value of count by 1. And you can see it printed the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 the whole way through 10. But what would happen if I, just for the heck of it, decide that I do not want to print anything that is not a even number? Well, here I'm going to show you another different statement that you can use inside of JavaScript, and it's called the continue statement. And it's very similar to break, which we're actually going to see break here again. So one thing that I can do is take count and get the modulus of 2. What modulus does for you is it returns the remainder after a division. So for example, if the value of count was equal to 2, well, the modulus of that would obviously be equal to 0, because 2 divided by 2 has no remainder. So what this guy's going to do is, in situations where this is even, it's going to, of course, increase the value of count. And then what it's going to do is I'm going to call the continue statement. And then what continue is going to do is it's going to jump out, it's going to eliminate this information down here, it's going to ignore it as if it never happened, and it's going to jump back up to the while statement and then test if it should continue looping through this statement. And you can see that it did that right there. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It only printed out even numbers. Now I keep talking about how I'm going to get in here and explain again the break statement. Remember, continue, once it's hit, jumps out, ignores everything that follows in between this opening and curly brackets here, and it jumps back here, and it continues to iterate from the beginning. Well, break is the absolute opposite. Here, I'm going to say, well, if count ever is equal to, let's say 6, for example, I want you to jump out of the entire while loop and actually come down here after the closing curly bracket that follows the while statement. I'm going to say if count is equal to 6, and I'm just going to simply say break. And if I do that, boink, you can see that it only printed out 2 and 4. And that's what break does. Continue makes you restart the beginning of the loop. Break makes you jump completely out of the loop altogether. So those are those two guys. We also have the do while loop. The only difference between while and do while is the do while loop will iterate through the cycle at least once, even if the value is false. And how you start it off is you type in do. And here I'm just going to come in, go document right, and I'm going to type in count, right like that. And then here I'm going to show you how to decrease the value of a variable by 1 using this shortcut code. It's called the decrement shortcut. And all it does is it says, hey, I want you to take the value of count and decrease it by 1. And that's exactly what it does. Then with the do while loop, you actually check whether it's true after you cycle through. And it might not be immediately apparent to why you would ever want to always do this. But as this tutorial continues, I'll show you different reasons why that might be true. So actually you'll see here that count is equal to 10, and the while check down here is a check to see if count is greater than 10. So technically this shouldn't be printed, and it wouldn't be printed if this was a while loop. But you'll see here in this situation that of course it is printed once. They do print out the value of count. But then after it hits this and it is indeed false, it jumps down here and continues to cycle through additional information in the program. So there's the do while statement. And last but not least, we have the for statement. Here, variable count is equal to 0. This is how the for statement is different. Remember with the while and the do while, we were actually creating this guy outside of those looping structures. Well, with the for loop, you actually create them inside of it. Count is less than. It's all self-contained. It's really the only difference between the for loop and the while loop. Everything's all in one place. And you can see that I'm also going to increment this guy here, but don't put the semicolon there. And this for loop is going to actually go through and perform all of these actions, just like we did with the while and the do while loop that you saw previously. Boink. And you could use the break statement and the continue statement and any of those other things inside of here, of course, with no problem at all. And as your final test in this absolutely insane tutorial where I teach you almost everything about JavaScript in one tutorial, I'm actually going to show you how to embed code from an external JavaScript file and how you do that. If you're still there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down here This is how you embed external JavaScript. Again, I'm using an HTML comment inside of here. Link to external, right like that. And of course you don't have to type that, but I just like typing that in there. And then if you want to link to that file, you go script language is equal to JavaScript. And then you provide the location of your JavaScript file. And you end that with .js to represent that this is indeed a JavaScript file. And here, you're actually going to put your script tag afterwards. Well, what do we need to do? We actually have to create the add function to JavaScript file. And you create functions inside of JavaScript in any programming language just so you don't have to do things over and over again. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function by starting it off with the word function. And then I'm going to give this function a name of add these. And then I'm going to define that we expect this function is going to be passed one value that we're going to call number 1 and another value that we're going to call number 2. Right like that. And in JavaScript, like we did in for statements and a lot of other different things in this tutorial, you surround everything that you want to be performed in this guy with curly brackets. And this guy's going to do some really simple addition. It's going to create a variable called total, and it's going to take the value stored in the variable called number 1, and it's going to add it to the value of number 2. And then what it's going to do, it's going to return the value of this guy right here with the return statement. Real simple. That's all it's going to do. And that's all the code you have to write. That's it. And when I come in here, we're going to paste in the value that it has right there. And then we're going to jump back into our regular JavaScript code we have right here. And we're going to use the document write, again, function call over in here between our two script tags that we had previously. And we're going to call that function that we just created in an external file. And here we're going to say if 5 plus 25 is equal to, and then we're going to combine the value that this function passes back. We're going to give it a value of 5 and 25, and then end that with a break statement. And you can see that it properly called that function from an external file, ran that function, and it printed all that out to screen. So this is a completely crazy tutorial, but most of you people probably have not even stuck with it the whole way, but it was fun for me to try this out. If you totally hate it, please tell me, and I'll stop doing tutorials like this. Otherwise, if you liked it or you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Till next time.